Sweet surrender as I love, serve, and remember.
Daring devotion. So last week we talked about devotion, and when we're devoted to something, we know it because we think about it a lot, and it brings us alive. And I talked about the negative devotion is when we're devoted to something and we don't get anything back. That's sort of an unhealthy devotion, or it's trying to take our power away from us. Healthy devotion is when you give yourself to it, you become more of yourself. And so I invited you this past week to start thinking about to what are you really devoted. And I'll be checking in it later on in the month. I'll be asking you later, so don't worry, I'm not going to ask you to come up yet. But to really think about to what are you deeply and profoundly devoted. I had some interesting conversations along in this week, and one of the things was, because I gave two examples, Kobe Bryant, basketball player, and Jack, music people, and people were saying, that's obvious. There's certain people who just have that, like they know, what their thing is. But there's so many of us who don't know what our thing is. And so I was thinking about that. And what came to mind was the Michelangelo, I don't know the quote, but he made the statue of David. And for those of you who don't know, David is in the Old Testament, and he beat Goliath. David was just a young boy. Goliath was the giant on the enemy side, and nobody could defeat him. And this little young kid gets a slingshot, whips the stone, knocks Goliath over as it hits him in the head. And Michelangelo, in creating the statue, said what he felt was the most important part in that story about David was not when he slung the slingshot, but the moment he knew that he could. It was like, I can do this. That was the great moment, and it was from that he drew his inspiration. But I was contemplating that, and I think there's even a moment before that that's really important. And that's the decision that that's something you even want to do. Choice is key to devotion. If you don't want to be in an unhealthy devotional relationship, then you have to be really clear that this is something that I am choosing, that nobody has power over what I choose to give my attention, my care, my passion to. And anything that comes after that always comes after choice. Because if you haven't made that choice, then the whole experience is a victim experience. Or, I had no choice to be, I'm just pretending. If I was Kobe Bryant, I had no choice. I had to be a basketball player because I happened to be good at it. That's a passive response to it. But for him, he wasn't in that. He's saying, I wasn't the superstar. He made a choice. I love basketball. I love the game of basketball, the ball, the shoes, everything about it. I chose it. And he chose it at age 13, and that was the power behind what drew him. It wasn't, I am the superstar, so this must be my destiny. You see the difference? We have to choose devotion. So I was thinking about when we choose what we're devoted to, what still blocks us? One of the things I've noticed for myself anyway, especially in spiritual progressive worlds and generally in New Thought, because those are most of the people that I've been with over the last 30 years, is sometimes it's been hard for me to talk about devotion. I'm getting more and more comfortable with it, but it took me a while. Because there's this place of disempowerment. I want to be in charge, and devotion is like giving someone else power. So I want to talk about that in a minute. And the reason, I guess where I'm going with is what blocks us from being devotional? What blocks us from giving our heart, body, mind, and soul to anything? To anything. And one is, I have to have something special. So let me just answer that one very quickly. Everybody here is spirit. So I might have a talent in music or sports or math or teaching or accounting. I might have all these different talents, So people have different degrees of talents. But the infinite life spring of spirit is in every being of all life, not just people, animals, plants, everyone has the fullness of spirit within us. So anyone at any time can make that choice. There's no special people. There might be people who have big, what Yogananda talks about is people like who have world missions where they have their individual people that they work with, but then they are also impacting the world. But that doesn't mean spirit is more in them. That's just a different role they're playing in the earth. This is one of the most important things to understand is measurement and comparison. When I was on the other side of the veil, that was the main message that was being given to me. There is no measurement. There's nothing to measure. There's nothing to compare. And I struggled with it because I wanted a much better message than that one. I always want something better. But that was so clear that was the message that I was getting. So I've been with it over the years because why was this so important that I get this message? And as I've been with it, I just see it all the time. How we give value to something when we see more of it. So if someone's really successful at something, they have more of something than someone who's not successful, who's still struggling down here. And in fact, the pureness of spirit is in both, equally in both. Because you don't judge by appearances. The spirit, there's no measurement. It's all one. You can be... We were talking in our family yesterday about the movie Rudy. How many people know that? How many of you know the movie Rudy? Oh, just a few. Well, good, because I won't be breaking any fantasies then. So Rudy's a movie that came out, I don't know when it came out, but it was a movie about this kid who loved football. Loved it. And he wanted to play on he loved the Notre Dame football team, and he really it's played by Sean Astin. So he's a small guy, but he really wants to be on the Notre Dame football team. So he's working, and he's not quite, doesn't have quite the grades yet, so he goes to a community college, but gets to participate with the football team, sort of on the outside, because it's his passion, he's devoted. And then finally he gets tutored, and he finally gets into Notre Dame, and he gets on the team. He's never playing any special teams, and so they just knock him over. He's just for practices for them to knock over, basically. But he doesn't care. I'm part of the Notre Dame football team. And then at the very end, the thing I remember is he does something great. Did he score a touchdown in the movie? What? Oh, he gets a sack. So he gets a sack, and everyone's so happy, and he's carried off the field in joy, and you're just crying, like, oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. And then you have a son like Julian who just dispels your dreams, like, Mom, that is not true. Joe Montana actually happened to be on that Notre Dame team. He's like, yeah, that's not really what happened. Not really the story. But as I was thinking about it, I thought it doesn't matter. The amount of people that story has touched, crying, I've seen it, people mirroring it in different other stories that people tell. They imitate we'll do anything for this guy, we really believe in him, because we love stories where someone gives their whole heart, body, mind, and soul to things. That's what excites us, not that he's the best that he's even good enough to play on the team. I always thought it was so funny with Prefontaine, an Olympic run, he got onto the Olympics. 3 people wanted to make movies about this guy. He never won a gold medal. And I said, why would it? Because he was so passionate about what he did. It wasn't the fact that he was a success. It's that he did everything with a passion. There is no measurement. A high school football coach who loves football, thinking about it, loves his players, is giving everything, is as alive and awake and touches as many lives deeply in spirit as an NFL football coach. And probably longer. NFL football coaches' careers aren't very long. But he could spend years and decades. In fact, a friend of mine, his dad was the coach for the high school basketball team at Cleveland Heights High. And that's where, for those of you who know, Travis Kelce and Jason Kelce are from Cleveland Heights. And that's the area I'm from. And So when his dad died, he was the basketball coach, and Travis had played just a couple years. He didn't really want to play, but he recruited him to get people to play basketball. And he had been the basketball coach for 30 years. And when he passed on, they were going to just do a short little service for him, a small little service, but all these people wanted to come, all the lives he impacted. And he's like, we can't, we just have no way to put a big service like this together. And Travis Kelce came and said, I'll pay for it all. I'm sorry to say a good story about Travis Kelce. He's a player on the Chiefs. The point is, though, every one of us is touching people's lives. You know that you're touching lives. And the more you care about something, you've been in a room with someone who's just talking about something because they're so alive with it, that you get excited about it, and you want to talk about it, and you want to learn about it. I mean, I've learned so much from music because I'm around Jack. I'm not an auditory person, which I learned very early on in our marriage. But he has continued to wake me up and wake up this ear that I never knew that I had. By being someone who's so passionate, it opens up something in me. Every one of us is a blessing. There is no measurement. There's no more or less. If you give your life to God, it's not about becoming a massive celebrity spiritual teacher. It's not about anyone else's decision that you are good enough or not good enough. It has nothing to do with anyone else. It is your journey of love and your journey of devotion that will continue to grow you. And there's someone at the door who can't get in. Sorry. So we open our heart to our journey. When I went to Agape, which is a church center down in Los Angeles, and it was a mega center. And Reverend Michael's a very big energy. Love him, love his mysticism. And so I was immersed in that community for about 6 years, worked there. And after I graduated from ministerial school, I went out into the world, and I got the best advice I'd ever gotten. My mentor minister said, stop listening to Reverend Michael. Because I had to find my own voice. And what if my voice wasn't going to be a big shh? I had to find my own way. And so sometimes that big energy gets us going. And that's cool. And I really get it. And I'm like, that's Reverend Michael's thing. He opens everybody up to their path. But then you have to go on your path. And you might, the amount of ministers that have come from that center, and we're all doing our ministry, and there's a few that have, well, I can think of one who has a big ministry, but the rest of us all do different size ministries. I've been in all different sizes, and I recognize the fullness of spirit is just as much here as anywhere else. And sometimes, at least on my own journey, I find it more because I get to actually connect with myself and not with all the energy. I can lose myself in that. It's really great. This is so cool. This is so great. But who am I in that? When we're devoted, we become more who we are, not less who we are. We will find more of our own unique voice. We will find our own unique voice. So in devoting ourselves, we are becoming more ourselves. But there is this problem with devotion, and I really had to look at it, of giving up one's power. Because in essence, when you're devoted to anything, now you're saying that thing has power over me. It's because it's so simple. We have spirit, but let's just go to something like basketball. If I'm devoted to basketball, then basketball has the power to break my heart. What if I gave everything I had to be a basketball player, and I'm really good in high school, and I go to college, and then I never go any further? I'm not good enough to go to the NBA. It just doesn't working out. I had just had my heart broken by the thing that I'm devoted to. I remember Thomas, I've always remembered it because it shook me. Thomas More, who's a spiritual psychologist, said that everyone will be betrayed and we will betray people, that human beings just betray. I'm like, oh, no, they don't. But there's different types of betrayal. You have expectations, people don't live up to them. You feel betrayed. I believed in you. You feel betrayed by life. We be betrayed by the very things that we love can betray us. This is what makes devotion so hard. If I'm just empowered and I'm the one in control and I'm the one calling the shots, I won't have to be hurt. I can create my reality the way that I want to create the reality. And so a lot of times when we come on the spiritual path, we want to get to that place of empowerment where I can create my world. And that's a really important stage. Being empowered is so much better than being a victim. True devotion, though, is not coming from victimhood. True devotion is coming from your power, which is why it's important to know our own power. I have the right to choose. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to give my heart to anybody. I don't have to give my heart to anything unless I choose to. And so if somebody, I'm just going to use the basketball because it's simple. If I choose to give my heart to basketball and it breaks my heart, I have a moment of, do I want to choose to continue to give myself to this because I think I can move through it and become even more involved in basketball? Or do I choose, you know what? This really isn't the path I want to take. This isn't really giving me any more what I need, and I can make a different choice. That's empowered devotion. So a devotional life, a healthy devotional life, is all of us are always at choice to what we are devoted to. When we are devoted, we come alive. When we are devoted and we are giving our heart, body, mind, and soul to whatever it is that we love, we are more alive than anything else we can do. I give myself to this. So I think sometimes we love principle, like we say it like the law, and it's like the law of electricity, and we're like, well, that won't betray us. We can count on that. But anyone who's been on a spiritual journey, there's bumps in the road. There's doubts. I'm not sure it always exactly works the way it says. It's not always as stable as the law of electricity. And you know what? The law of electricity can't really love me back. It's like, does that matter to me that the law of electricity can't love me back? That I can't be in a mutually unified love relationship, an intimate, passionate love relationship with the law of electricity? I'm only saying that because when we talk about the law of life, it's infinitely responsive, but it's not something you love. It's an isness. It's not a relationship. And when we come the most alive, I have never met anyone who said, when I have fallen in love, I'm so alive. And how to sustain that feeling of being in love? Well, you're going to go through challenges. You're going to go through this just popped in my head, of friends. What was that? We're not on a break. We were on a break. Sorry. There's times to, like, this really hurts. I don't know if I want to go on anymore on the spiritual journey. It's the dark night of the soul. Things aren't showing up the way I thought they were going to show up. Things aren't happening. Look at this world. I've been on the spiritual path. Look at all the pain. Look at all the suffering. All these reasons to say, you know what? No, I'm out of here. And that's a legitimate choice, but it's a choice that you make from empowerment. And if you choose to stay in the relationship with this divine loving presence, that, okay, it's a loving presence, but where is it in my life? Where is it in other people's life? How? If you choose to stay in it, in any devotional relationship, if it's healthy, it's going to take you even deeper and deeper beyond what you ever thought you could go. And for those of you who have been in any type of long-term relationship with family members, with children, with spouses, your parents, maybe parents, you don't have a choice really. Friendships, colleagues, well, friendships especially, these are choice relationships, and if you stay in them, right, they just go deeper and deeper. There's so much about relationships that if you're not growing, that it tends to become stale. I was listening to these two people talk about, I have this thing that if I'm not growing in a relationship, to me, that's a time to separate. I thought that was pretty drastic. But I was thinking about it. When I first met Jack, he said, I have two things I want. I want to pray and grow. And I would say for both of us, we've been praying and growing the whole time. And that's what keeps us alive. Growth is what keeps us alive. And growth has growing pains. Growth has growing pains. So when we're devoted, we're going to have growing pains, and we have to choose, am I staying in it? Am I willing to go through the growing pains? Because that's when the treasures start to get revealed, right? I was listening to this guy, Diego, I don't know how to say his last name, Ayer. Pretty beautiful story of devotion. He was telling the story about when he got to be about 30, he said, I was more lost than I've ever been. I was angry. I had a chip on my shoulder from a violent childhood and from being in the Marine Corps. I was always getting in fights. I couldn't keep jobs and I couldn't keep friends. I was ready to just sort of I just didn't like life very much. I didn't like people. He said, I was walking down the street one day and there was this pet adoption place, and there was this really cute gray and white boxer, pit bull. And he said, oh, it's so cute. And he's talking to the lady. He goes, yeah, no, I can't do it. I work late and couldn't take care of him, but thanks anyway. And she said, okay, great, but can you take him for a walk around the block? He needs to pee. And so he said, okay, and he takes him around the block, and by the time he gets back, he's totally in love with the dog, and I have to have this dog. And he says that he takes the dog home. He names him Rusty James after a character in a movie he likes. And he says, I had the first good night's sleep of my life. Rusty James slept in the bed next to me, his head on the pillow. And when I woke up from one of my nightmares, I just turned over and held him, and I went right back to sleep, and I was at peace. He said, and things started to shift. I was walking down the street, and I'm always ready for a fight, and this guy's like, oh, this guy thinks he's in Britain. He's on the wrong side of the sidewalk, and he's like ready to go. But then he looks down at Rusty James, and Rusty James smiling up at him. He's like, yeah, you're right, it's not worth it. And he goes to the other side of the street. So then I start making different decisions. Hey, can you go out for a few beers afterwards? I can't, I gotta go home and walk Rusty James. Hey, can you go out and do this? No, I can't, I gotta go home and feed Rusty James. Oh, I can't fight with my girlfriend as much because it's going to freak out Rusty James. Let's talk about it later. And his behavior starts to shift. He said, under Rusty James' tutelage, I started to learn more patience and kindness, forgiveness, and unconditional love. So when he and his girlfriend split up for good, he knew that Rusty James had to be in both of their lives, that Rusty James needed both of their love. And so they willingly shared Rusty James. And he said it was going well, and he said, but he kept pushing him. Rusty James was always pushing him past his comfort zone, and one of the worst things was people. He just didn't like people. The adult Diego did not like people very much, and people wanted to keep coming over and pet Rusty James, and he'd be like, yeah, and just drag on. He said, no, I don't want to stop and talk to people. He said, but one day we were walking along, and there's this guy who was in a wheelchair. He's 80 years old. And Rusty James went over, and they're just petting. And he said the man in the wheelchair just was oozing so much joy and delight. And he's like, wow, he's bringing so much joy. He said, I was thinking about it, and I thought, well, if Rusty James and I can bring just a smile and all the stuff that's happening, if we can just bring a little bit of joy to someone, why shouldn't we do that? So he started to be willing to allow people to come pet Rusty James. And he said, then I try to open up a little bit more and have conversations with them. I'm like, hey, this isn't so bad. I'm actually talking with people and connecting with people. Oh, and look at that. I'm sober now. I don't drink anymore. And these things are unfolding, and he's connecting with people. And so he has this 5 years of just this love affair with Rusty James. And then his former girlfriend comes home to him and says, I got a job in Texas, and I need to move there. And so they had to decide about Rusty James. And they said it was a no-brainer. She has family and friends down there. She has a great job and money. She could take care of him. He'd have a backyard. I don't have anything like that to give Rusty James. I want him to have his best life. So after 5 years, he says goodbye to Rusty James. And he said, I was devastated. And all I wanted to do was drink my pain away. And I walked out the door, and in front of me was a bar, and to the right was a gym. And he said, I wanted to go to that bar, but he knew I'm in such a bad state, I know I'm going to go in a bender, and I don't care about people, jobs, anything, and I'm going to die. And he said, who would Rusty James want to walk through that door? If he were there, who would he want? The person who went to the bar in Bender or the person who went to the gym? And so he went to the gym. And he continued to make choices based on this love from this dog that he's not even with anymore. His former girlfriend sends him videos and pictures. And then eventually Rusty James passed on. And he said, but I still make every decision. What would Rusty James want from me? That highest and best good. That's divine devotion if I've ever known it. Devotion transforms us. It helps us to die to the old and to become something new and better and beautiful. When we dare to be devoted, when we dare to give our heart to something, the fear, I think, is we know we're going to be different. There's no way I can be devoted to anything without being changed, and we know that, and I think that's part of the distance that we keep. I don't want to be betrayed. I don't want to be let down. But when we take that daring measure and devote our heart, our body, our mind, and say, how can I give myself more and more to this thing that I love, we become more of who we are. The more we love others, the more we become true to ourselves. Dare to be devoted. So this week I invite you to continue on this quest, this inner quest to what are you devoted to, and how much are you willing to dare yourself to give everything, this thing that you love, everything. And notice those places where you're holding back a little. And be okay with that, but just notice, what is that? What's holding me back? If I'm so devoted to truth, love, beauty, it doesn't have to be a thing. I'll just tell one more story because in terms of finding what you're devoted to, I had a practitioner friend, and she was a microbiologist, worked in a government agency in D.C., and we were having a conversation, and she was slightly embarrassed because I love my job, and I love my work, and I know it's great, but what really matters to me is when I walk into a home, creating beauty. That's what gets her alive. But she felt like it was less than being a microbiologist. And I said, well, maybe beauty, microbiology can come under the umbrella of beauty, but maybe beauty is why you're here. Beauty is why you're on this planet. And it's funny, you have those moments where you just see like everything lock up, and I'm on the other side of the country, so I don't know the details, but slowly I saw her life changing, her relationships changing, the way she was living her life completely shifted, because she finally said, oh, I'm here for beauty. And beauty is imbibing everything I do. That's what brings her alive. Not just what she's really good at, her job, what she's really good at, high level, making lots of money, but beauty. I think of Mahatma Gandhi, truth. His autobiography is called My Experiments with Truth. And if you read his book, which I did once, it's all about what's the truth here. And he's experimenting all the time. That's why he calls it My Experiments. But truth is what brings him alive. Love is what brings some people alive. Peace. So it doesn't have to be a career. It can be a quality. What is a quality that brings you alive, that you can be devoted to? It's not that I'm just interested in it. Like, I like harmony. I think it's great, but I'm not going to be devoted to harmony. It's a beautiful quality. Is there a quality that gets you, because sometimes God is abstract. Maybe you have a form of the divine that you like. Maybe you have a quality of the divine that you like. Explore that this week. What are you willing to give your whole self to? Maybe it's love. How do I give myself to love? Heart, body, mind, and soul. I don't know what that looks like. I'm willing to go into the unknown. I'm willing to go into the mystery. I'm willing to go into the mystery within myself to discover total and complete love. And our lives will begin to change no more and no differently than Diego's life changed by loving his beautiful dog, Rusty James. Let's pray. And so when we pray with devotion. We're willing to give our whole heart, body, mind, and soul to this prayer. And when we say we're giving ourselves to the prayer, we recognize the words are on the surface of the prayer. That it's what's behind the words that we fall in love with. We fall in love with every breath and every space in between. To this extraordinary presence of light and love, of truth, of beauty, of wisdom, of peace, of harmony. We fall in love. We court the invisible as if it's more real to us than the chairs upon which we sit. We are willing to give ourselves to that which we love, to that which we are devoted. We let go of fear, knowing that we are always empowered, we're always in choice, we are always free, we are always empowered, we always have choice, we are always free. We are always empowered. We are always at choice. We are always free. And when we know that, we can give ourselves even more. We can devote even more because we can never lose that power. And so in that, we choose and we choose and we choose again to devote ourselves to that very thing that makes each and every one of us unique. There's no better or worse. There's no higher or lower. There's no more or there's no less. In spirit, it is the extent to which we give ourselves that's all that matters. And that's completely up to each and every one of us individually. And so I celebrate all of us in our individuality, in our uniqueness, in our love, and that we each have this extraordinary story, even as I was mesmerized by Diego's story, that we each have those stories of how devotion to something greater than ourselves has changed us, that continues to grow us and evolve us and make us become more and more every day who and what we really are. I can't imagine life without it. Can't imagine life without this thing that we're devoted to, because it is everything. It becomes everything. It doesn't come and it doesn't go. It is always there. It is always there. Holding us, guiding us, directing us through and as our heart and our body and our mind and our soul. It is truly life itself. And so in this deep and profound gratitude for who and what each and one of us is and the devotions that we walk with throughout our life, that we fully give ourselves to. Thank you. Thank you. I am so grateful to know so many beings full of love and devotion to their passions and to their interests that open up my heart and my soul and my memory of who and what I am. So for all of this love, I just say thank you, thank you, thank you, God. And I release this word into the law of life, knowing that as it has been spoken, it is done. And so it is. Amen and amen.
I walk in God in all